Welcome back to the Ready Running Podcast, episode 2.
We made it far.
We made it far. Good things. Still don't really have an intro. We'll figure it out. In this episode, we're going to talk about some fun things, kind of some rookie mistakes, as it were. But Rachel had a great idea to share kind of where we are in our running journey. You kind of heard from episode 1 our whole history, but what are we training for right now? Because we coach and we train, but a lot of that comes from our own personal lifting and running experience. So right now we're both training for some big races, so we kind of want to share what's going on. So you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start us off, and as always, you can go ahead in the video. We will put timestamps at the bottom if you don't care what we're training for or whatever, but I think it's fun. It makes it a little bit more relatable, hopefully, to you all. So right now, I am training for Worlds for trail running. I made the Classic Mountain team, which is basically just like a 10K almost or about, and it's like up and down a mountain. So that's in November in Thailand. So I'm going over and representing the US over there for that. But coming up this week, I'm doing a race actually in Flagstaff called Flagstaff Sky Peaks. And it's part of the Golden Trail series, which it's pretty cool because they have races like all over the world that they're doing. Like I did one in Spain and one in Switzerland earlier this year, and now they have one in Flagstaff, like in our backyard. So I'm super excited to be able to race there. And yeah, training's gone pretty well the past month, so that's good. In April and a little bit in August, the beginning of August, I was dealing with like some hip pain, like going up hills and stuff. It was really hard for me to climb without my hip like really hurting. So that's taken me out for a couple weeks here and there and training over the spring and the summer. But other than that, pretty smooth sailing. So yeah, I'm really excited to race this coming weekend.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What are some strategies going into the race? What are you hoping for? Maybe some goals, maybe just some ideas when you go into a big race like this. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so I think my strategy, or I'm kind of having to rethink a lot of the strategy because there's been some fires like in Flagstaff and they've had to change the course. So it was going to be a 17-mile course with about 2,000 feet of gain, and now they shortened it. It's 15 miles, but it's like 4,000 feet of gain. So they doubled the gain and like made the race a little bit shorter mileage wise, but the gain is like kind of right in the middle of the race, and there's a couple like really steep miles, so it kind of starts off like climbing like gradually and then like really goes up and then you just go down. So it's actually pretty good for me for training. It's kind of like a longer classic mountain race. Like a lot of times the classic mountain races, like I said, are 10Ks, and this one is like 15 miles. So, but it's like up and down. Some trail races you get your like going up and down and up again and down, and you have another big climb. So this one's just like there's one big climb in it, and it's probably the first like 7 miles, and then the last part of it is all downhill. So yeah, just kind of thinking through what that means for me. I know I'm like good at downhill, so I think I just need to find someone, stick with them for the uphill, and then hopefully pass some people on the downhill at the end of it.
Sweet. And this one is a little different than some of the other Golden Trail series because you actually get to train. Like this is home turf in a sense. You know this mountain, you know some of the trails you've trained on it a lot, which I'm sure that's got to help in trail running.
Yeah, definitely. Usually like for trail running, a lot of times you're not living like right near the trails that you're going to be racing on. So a lot of people will go to like where they're racing a couple of weeks before a big race and kind of just like go to the trails and train there so that they can like kind of get a feel for the trails. So it's nice that I have this in this race. Another big thing is it's up at altitude, and so I kind of like know how altitude feels, and some people coming into this race like don't live at altitude and stuff. So yeah, that's another thing. Like I know how it feels to like run and what effort I need to put in, because at altitude I feel like if you go out too fast it's like a lot different than going out too fast at sea level, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
We could have a whole podcast on altitude.
Yeah, totally.
I didn't realize until we moved here how big a difference altitude makes, but it can be anywhere from 20 to even 30 seconds a mile depending on your skill level and how fast you are.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
And how long the race is. The longer the race, I think the more time per mile you can kind of like cut off if you're at sea level.
Yeah, and even friends, we have had friends who have trained up here or lived up here and not realized how big a difference it was. And they're like, we can't drop 20 seconds a mile in a half marathon. And then they went down to sea level and crushed their PRs, not realizing how much of a training advantage it is to be training at altitude, and how much, like, it's an advantage to a lot of things internally and like red blood cells and stuff, but it makes it harder than you realize it is at altitude.
The mental gains, I feel like, are big too.
Yeah.
So that's something cool. But yeah, let's head over to Drew and see what he's training for.
I'm training for a couple races. I've got the San Jose Half Marathon in October. I think it's the 9th or 10th that weekend.
Yeah.
And that's kind of just like a training run almost. It's a build up to CIM in December. And then I have Boston in April, which will be my first Boston.
Yes.
So those are the next 3 big races that I'm going for. The half, the goal is to break 119, which would kind of be like an indicator run. If I can break 119 and a half, it would say that I have the fitness to be able to run a sub 245, which is my goal at CIM.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I'm dealing with a little Achilles injury this literally just week. I ran a 17-mile long run in brand new flats, which is not a great idea if you're not used to training in flats, which we'll actually talk about.
We'll talk about that later, yeah.
Tonight. But yeah, I started feeling kind of like a nagging pull in my calf Achilles area after the long run, and then the next day I hiked Humphreys, which is the tallest peak in Flagstaff.
In Arizona, actually.
Yeah, tallest peak in Arizona, and then that night I did the leg day at the gym, so...
Not a great combo.
It's
also,
my fault.
also, I will add too, he showed me his inserts. He has like some inserts for his shoes, and they are like wrecked.
Yeah.
And so that probably didn't help. I don't think that was the reason for it, but I don't know if there's one reason for this happening. I think it's everything combined, which is something that you can learn from running in general. I feel like it's usually not just like one thing. It's like a combo of like a lot of things that can make a race or training really good, or that causes you to have like a setback or something.
Totally. And it's so weird with running. If one thing's hurting, you never know what actually is the cause of it. Like, I freaked out at first because I'm like, oh, Achilles, that's a serious injury. But it ended up being probably more my calf was really tight and I had a knot in it. And because of my lower mileage summer for speed training, I hadn't been rolling out or stretching in the ways I typically do when I'm in marathon training. So I got a little lazy and paid for it. But I thought it was an Achilles problem, but it's really, oh, well, it could be a calf problem. I mean, it could be your quad on your left side is hurting your right ankle. So you really have to go through the full steps, really roll everything out, make sure everything feels good, because in running, sometimes it's an imbalance that causes the injury.
Yeah, totally. And if you have been dealing with an injury for a really long time, I would also say it's not a bad idea to go into a PT or a chiropractor who really understands running and just get it checked out and see what's going on if you've been dealing with something for a long time, because it can be frustrating if you're dealing with an injury for a really long time and don't know how to fix it.
Yeah, and you could be doing everything possible for the one problem area, and it could be somewhere completely else. And
yeah.
You'd hate to waste time. Wasting time in running is the worst.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's awesome. We are really excited for our races this fall, and excited also about the topic of this podcast, which is...
Rookie mistakes.
Rookie mistakes.
Yep. This is going to be a fun one. We wrote down 5 rookie mistakes. We could probably list 20. We might have a couple parts. You can comment below if you want a part 2 to this, if you like it. Hit that subscribe button. But we wrote down 5 that are really common. This, as you heard from episode 1 probably, I'm still relatively new to running. This is my 3rd year running. Rachel's run her entire life. She's a pro. And I will be saying this from my personal experience. She probably had this too, like decades ago when she started. But we've both made these mistakes, and I will kind of talk about how and why I made these mistakes and how I like worked out of them. And then Rachel will give her professional opinion of what she's learned from experience and how she would coach people who have made these rookie mistakes.
Yeah, I coach a lot, or a good amount of athletes, so I feel like if someone's really new to running, I see them making a lot of these mistakes too. So better to catch them early and kind of know what you're doing running.
Yes, so number 1, not taking easy days easy.
Big mistake.
Rookie mistake. Oh man, so I'm competitive, and I think sometimes easy runs are the easiest things to improve on, because let's say you just started running. When I started running, my easy pace was probably like 9:30 mile pace. And people might be slower, faster, whatever, depending on your background. But I almost found too much pride in running 9-minute pace was easy. So then I go, oh, I could run 8:30 pace. And was it easy? Maybe, but I was pushing easy, and I was starting to sweat a bit more. I was starting to breathe a bit heavier. And for me, it was easier to get faster at easy pace than to get faster at PR pace or max effort pace, because that's the fastest I can be. But I could easily cheat the system, and instead of run a 9-minute true easy pace, I could run an 8-minute easy-ish pace and be like, oh yes, I'm so fast. When the reality was I wasn't running in the effort range that I should have been running. This is a mistake I see so many people make, and I'm sure you do too as a coach.
Yeah, and I think some of it too, if you're coming from a different sport, it's a little different, because I feel like in like football or soccer or something, you could have like harder practices like right in a row, or your coach could be really pushing you in an area like to develop you as an athlete, and you could like have hard practices like maybe a little bit more often, but in running you really have to take your easy days easy so that you recover to be able to like make your hard days hard. So for me, if I see athletes like really pushing their easy pace, like maybe their easy pace is like truly a 9-minute mile and they're really running an 8:30 minute mile pace on their easy days, I kind of see them start not being able to hold paces that they normally would have been able to on the hard workout days. And then every day just becomes this like medium effort to running pace. And that's something like I've dealt with in high school and stuff like that. Like there's a time I wasn't taking my easy days easy also, and I really suffered in my training and stuff, and kind of got into a training hole because of that. But that's what I see in athletes if they're not taking their easy days truly easy. And I would also say too, you probably can do probably 2, at most 3, but like when you're starting off running, I would just start off with 1 or 2 days as hard workout days where you're like really pushing yourself, and then the other days are just easy recovery days, or maybe you're resting or cross training. So that's how I would set it up as a coach, just having like 1 day be a harder workout day, and if you can handle that, like 2 days be a harder workout days, and kind of just like build from there.
Totally. Yeah, even now, my mileage is about 50 right now for building up to the marathon, and I only do 1 workout midweek. It's usually like workout Wednesdays, sometimes Tuesday, and then I'll do a long run, and the long run will be a little harder than easy pace. So it's really only 2 workouts, but I run 6 days a week. The other 4 days are all easy. Some people say conversational pace. I like that because sometimes people get so caught up in the numbers, or if you buy like a pre-made plan, it'll often say like run this time pace. And I get what they're saying, but the reality is I think the effort is way more important than the time. Yeah. If 9 minutes is easy, just say do easy pace. Don't say, oh, I have to stick to 9 even if it kind of hurts a little bit. Conversational pace, true easy. You should be able to have a full conversation. Like we could have this podcast and run.
While we're running.
That's easy. That's like true easy.
Yeah.
And that's how paces now are for us. Like we can talk and joke and laugh and like talk about anything we want on a true easy run. And that's what most of your mileage should actually be.
And it kind of makes running fun because you're not in pain just the entire time that you're running. So it makes running fun because you actually can like talk and laugh and joke with each other like and run with someone else, run with friends, run with a group. And I would also say it's important to not think of your easy run paces as like how in shape you are, because I feel like for me, if I'm in a really hard training block in the middle of training, my easy paces may be like way slower than they were when I wasn't doing as intense workouts, just because I'm having to like recover more from things. So maybe there's a time that I'm running like 30 seconds slower per mile on easy runs, but like that's the pace my body needs to go to be able to recover, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that I'm like in better or worse shape. I would look more to workouts in races and like how you're doing then to really collect the data of like how you actually are fitness wise, instead of like saying my easy pace is like dropping and dropping and dropping, you know.
Which that is so big. So many people make that mistake. I've made that mistake so much. A lot of it's just a pride issue, a little bit of an ignorance issue. But yeah, like she's saying, just because my easy pace was getting faster at one point, I really wasn't getting that much faster. Like, of course you could crush an easy run, but if you're not crushing your workouts and your races are going bad, and you're like, but I'm trying so hard and I'm getting so fast at easy runs. It's like, maybe you're not doing easy runs and you're not actually giving your body a chance to recover, to actually crush workouts faster than you think you can, and hit race paces that you think you couldn't hit.
Yeah, I will say I don't think that my easy run pace has changed that much from like where I was in high school to now. And I've gotten like significantly faster since high school. So that's like another like point to, okay, maybe it doesn't really matter how fast you're running your easy paces, you know?
That's huge.
Yeah.
And I think for me, once Rachel taught me this, really I learned it from her. Mostly change the pride mindset that you have. Like for me, I was like, okay, instead of being proud of how fast I'm going in my easy runs, I'm going to be proud that I stick to an easy pace no matter what. And I'll be one of those guys where it's like, wait, aren't you really fast, but you're running this slow? I'm like, yes, because I can stay committed to the process and trust the process. I can trust my fitness. I'll crush my workouts and I'll beat you on race day, not on my easy run.
Yeah.
You know? So trust that.
Yeah, it's funny too. Some of our friends even here, they'll be like, we want to run with you, but we just don't think that you can we can keep up with you or something like that. And we're like, well, we can do an easy run together.
Yeah.
And like easy pace is easy pace.
Exactly.
And yeah, it's fun to just be able to run with people from like all different types of fitnesses and stuff, and just run easy with them.
Exactly.
So yeah, easy runs are fun. They make running fun, and they'll make you faster too. Another reason, or a couple of reasons why easy runs are really beneficial, because you might also be thinking, how could this be beneficial if I'm going like so easy? Don't I need to be like really pushing? But a lot of running is just building that mileage so that your muscles have like the muscle memory of like, this is how to run. So easy runs really do build efficiency, and they also aid in recovery because you're getting that blood flow through your legs. So you actually are really helping yourself and helping your running while you're running easy. You're increasing your running economy and you're increasing recovery as well.
Yeah, huge. Something that I used was just shutting off my watch. I use a Garmin, love smartwatches. But sometimes the pace gets in your head. And if you're one of those people, maybe it's better to run for time, or just to not know what your pace is, because you can get really competitive with yourself. So sometimes I would switch it off so that it would either be when I looked down, I couldn't see my pace, or I would only see my heart rate, which watches heart rate, that's a separate topic. They're not the most accurate of all time. Sometimes they're accurate relative to the watch, but we won't go there. But some people will say, if you do have an accurate way of measuring your heart rate, people like talk about the Maffetone method all the time, which is 180 minus your age should be like an easy pace limit. So for me, I'm 29 minus 180. What is that? 51?
Yeah.
151. So 151 should kind of be the max range of heart rate for me. And it can be like plus or minus 10 depending on your fitness level and running background.
Yeah, my heart rate is actually really, really low, like my max heart rate. So I feel like that method wouldn't even work for me. But yeah, I feel like heart rate training is like a whole different topic to talk about for sure. But it can be helpful if you don't know what your easy pace is. That can be like a really good method to use just to like know how to feel on an easy pace. But I will say the conversational method is a great way too. If you can talk, you're going easy.
Yeah, that's like impossible to fake. You can't have a full conversation in the middle of a sprint.
Yeah.
So that's why all these other methods and ways of monitoring stuff, it's great. And for some people it works more than others, but there are outliers and everybody's a little different. So you have to find what works for you. Realistically though, everyone can, if you're able to talk, it's easy. You can't really fake that.
Yeah. The other thing that I've done when you're talking about like just using a stopwatch and not even GPS, sometimes I like won't even wear a watch if I know like how long a route is and how long I want to go that day. It's just like, I don't even want to know like any metrics, because even if I shut off the GPS, I still know like where the mile marker is, and I can still look down and check on my watch and things like that. So sometimes for me, it's better just to like go for a run and not even wear the watch and just like have fun.
Yeah, it's just more freeing.
Yeah, totally.
So.
Yeah, I feel like that covers the first one pretty well.
Of course. And if any of these you've struggled with or wonder more of, just leave comments below, questions below. We'd love to help answer any of the random side tangents we might go on.
Yeah, true.
Second one, similar to the first one, is maxing out too often. I guess what I think of is more like going for PRs too often. And I see people in the gym struggle with this just as much as people on the track. But for me, when I started, logically it seems you have to run fast to be fast. That's what I think, which, as we just debunked, isn't really true, even for elite athletes. But I would be like, oh man, this week I'm gonna try my mile PR, and I would set it because it's the first week I've run, and then I'd be like, oh, 5K next week, and then I'm gonna run a 10K PR, and as I'm training for my mile PR, I'm gonna run a half marathon, and it's just like you're going from one high to the next, and there's just a lot of problems with that. What are some of the problems?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think that that's really easy to do, especially if you're new to running, because it is fun to like see yourself get faster. And if you're doing something totally new, you are going to just get better a lot faster if you're consistent with training and stuff. So it is fun to do, but it's not necessarily going to help you be the fastest in one event, just because you're like wearing yourself out so often. So it's kind of like how you don't want to go hard every single day in training, because then you'll just get to a place where you're running all medium efforts every week. If you race every weekend, all of your races are going to start being more like medium effort races. Even if they feel like you're going as hard as you can, and you probably are going as hard as you can, you don't have this nice like build and training cycle and like time of tapering and really getting your legs ready to run the fastest that you can. So maybe you could run like a mile PR in 7 minutes and do that every single week for like a really long time. Or you could run like a 6:30 mile at the end of your season after training for a long time, getting some good workouts and tapering back, getting your legs fresh, and then like really going for a PR.
Totally. And I remember that was one of the first things that Rachel changed in my training when we first started dating, which is another story. But I was working on my mile. I wanted to break 5 in the mile as I was training for my first half marathon, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I was making it up, guys. And I think 5:17 was the best I had after like 4 months of training myself. And I was dropping probably like 3-5 seconds like every week or something when I was going for it. But I was kind of getting to the point where it was a lot harder to drop that time. And she took over and was like, we're going to race a mile in like a month and a half or 2 months. And we're not going to like race a mile until then. And I was like, what? So I had to really trust her training. And in my mind, I'm like, how am I going to get faster at a mile if I'm not racing a mile? And you could apply this to any distance, really. But we did a lot of workouts that are very specific to the race that you're trying to run. And at the end of that time, I broke 5 for the first time, ran a 4:59, and I was like, wow, like that took so much trust and faith in like this process, but it was way more efficient than if I would have just raced a mile every weekend. I would have, like she said, I was never going to be at 100% maximum effort. I'd be running like 90% or 80%, and I probably just would have got burned out or frustrated that I wasn't getting better. And if I had a bad weekend where, God forbid, I went slower, I would have thought like, oh, well, that's my max. I can't get any faster.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I could see that a lot with athletes. Like, the more you test yourself too, the more feedback you're getting, which could be good if you're like getting good feedback and getting faster and faster. But it could also really like wreck you if you're like getting slower and slower each week because your body is just like worn out from racing so often.
Yeah, and this is something a lot of people that we know probably struggle with too. Is, let's say you have a goal race, like we just talked about our goal races.
Mm-hmm.
You have a half marathon that you're training for that you're 2 months out, but a couple weekends before you're like, there's a local 5K and the trophy looks kind of cool. Why don't we just run the 5K out of nowhere?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You see this?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I think like, I also just see people, they'll like find a race randomly and be like, oh, that looks fun. Like you're saying, like, it's this weekend. That's like, it's here. I'll just do it. And I would say like pick a goal race and like really train for that goal race, and make it so that that is like what you're looking for, and like your head can't turn one way or the other to like be looking at different races, because it's way better to train specifically for a race, and training for like a half marathon or a marathon is way different than training for a mile or a 5K. So if you're training for a mile, do training for a mile. If you're training for a marathon, do training for a marathon. But you're not going to run a mile PR probably while you're training for a marathon, because it's just like really different training.
Exactly.
Or even if you do run a mile PR, that would be awesome, but you're probably not going to reach like your max potential of that, because that's not what you're specifically training for.
Totally. And that's the one the caveat that I'd say maybe to contradict this is know your goals, know yourself. If your goal is just to have fun and you don't care about like crushing a race, then fine, have your goal. Your goal could be something as like, I want to run 3 5Ks this year. And it has nothing to do with place, nothing to do with time, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, to have a good goal for yourself, it looks different for everybody. But if you're saying, I want to break 1:30 and a half, and that would be a huge all-time goal, you kind of have to make some sacrifices to get there. And that could include a lot of things. It could include diets, and it could include the shoes and the money and the time that you have to put into that race. But if your goal is you want to run as fast as you possibly can within reason at a given time, at a given distance, you can't like cut corners and run another race, because like you're saying, maybe you still PR at the end of everything, but you probably could have done better.
Yeah.
If you're not wearing yourself out unnecessarily.
Yeah. So essentially, like, whatever your goal is, set the goal and go for it. Like, have your mind on that, and don't like shift all the time based on like what race is that weekend, you know. And it's totally okay to shift your goals if you're just like not excited about the first goal that you set anymore. I think that's like a totally different thing. But I think to race your best, like, pick a goal and stick with it like to the end. And the other part of this is, if you're training for a marathon and that's like your goal race, that doesn't mean that later on you can't like shift to wanting to do like 5K or mile training. And I think that's been something that has really been beneficial for Drew's training, is doing like a speed phase. So this past summer, we did training more for like 800 and the mile before it was time to shift over and focus like specifically on marathon training. And usually I like to see like a 12 to 16 week build up for a marathon. So over the summer was a great time to build that speed. And then when we were like 12 to 16 weeks out, it's like, okay, like time to shift to marathon specific training.
Exactly. Which gave me a lot of freedom, because I got to just work on speed, something that was like fun for me. And it was beneficial even to training now, because the paces I have to hit for a marathon now seem so much slower than what I was running over the summertime. So it's a win-win. It gives me a time to just kind of like relax and enjoy running and not feel like a burden. And at the same time, it has like a dual factor of also being beneficial for my future training for the marathon.
Yeah. So you can switch and like you could PR in the mile and PR in the marathon, probably even in the same year, but in just different training cycles.
Totally. And there's even times like I told you at the beginning, I'm running San Jose in a few weeks, and I have the marathon in December, and you're like, oh, but isn't that breaking the rule? It's like, well, no, because how I'm treating San Jose is the key. And this is like the mentality, the focus aspect that we're talking about. When I go into San Jose, I'm not saying this is the fastest half marathon I can run. It's going to be a training run of sorts. Like it will be, instead of doing a long run workout that weekend, that will be my long run workout that weekend. So the taper isn't going to be big for it. I'm going to just kind of go right into it, do the best I can. And my goal is to break 119. If my only goal is to run a fast half, that would probably be like, could I break 115?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
If that was like what I'm tapering for, that's what I'm training for, what I'm locked in for. If that was my CIM this year, then maybe I'd do a 5K build up to a half. But I'm treating it as a workout. So the goals shift accordingly. The times slow down, and I'm like, okay, I'll be happy with the 119. Even if I know I can be faster than that, that would indicate what fitness I need to be in to run my main goal of running a sub 245 at CIM.
Yeah, and I think too, there are some people that just love racing, and so if you're one of those people, I think it's fine to like do races on the way to like a buildup of a big race. Like if you want to race a 10K or a 5K or a half or something like that on the way to a marathon, I don't think that that's a bad thing at all. I just think like keep your goal focused on the marathon and just know you're probably not going to be running as fast in that 5K as you could, but that's okay.
Yeah, if you're okay with that mentally, if you're someone who you're like, this won't be my best race, but I'm going to just enjoy it and I'm not going to mess up my training, then go for it.
Yeah.
But you have to know yourself, because if you're someone who you're like, man, oh, now I'm slow at the 5K, I've gotten so much slower, it's like, probably not. You're probably just in the middle of marathon training, and if you did a speed block, you'd be back where you want to be. Yeah,
I have some athletes like that are in marathon training, and they did do 5K training like before and like a separate build up, and now they're like, oh, but I'm not as fast like on the 5K training and stuff, and I'm like, that's okay, that's not our goal right now. Mm-hmm. So like that's totally fine, and we could get back to that. If you want to make that your goal, then we could go back to 5K training. But if you want to marathon train, then like this is marathon training, you know? So just train specifically for your goals and be okay if you're like training for a marathon and you're not in 5K shape. That's like okay, normal, and probably good, because it means you're closer to marathon shape.
Totally. Well said.
Yeah, thanks. Sweet.
We'll talk about goals in a future episode coming up soon, because I think that's something we could all learn from.
Totally.
But we'll move on to number 3.
Number 3, yeah.
Number 3. Okay. Rookie mistake number 3 is not realizing the importance of sleep and nutrition.
Oh, that is a big one.
It's a big one.
When did you learn this lesson?
I'm always learning this lesson. I feel like the faster and faster you get, the higher and higher your goals are, the more you realize the importance of sleep and nutrition. The little things, the 1% of things. In college, as a tennis player, I did not care about sleep or nutrition. And looking back, I was like, dang, I could have been 10% better, if not more, if I would have got healthy sleep and ate balanced whole food, like nutritious meals, even most of the time. I think sometimes people think your diet has to be just like this insane, strict thing, locked in, but it's like, if you eat clean 70-80% of the time, you can kind of eat whatever you want. The other 20-30, as long as it's like within your caloric intake range, which is pretty generous range.
Yeah.
I think you can have your cake and eat it too. Controversy.
Yeah, the 80-20 rule. Yeah. I like that one.
Especially as a runner, you're burning so many calories.
Yeah. It's
okay. If you're a big ice cream person, keep ice cream in the diet.
Yeah.
Just work out the rest of the diet so that you can have ice cream in your diet. You're not trying to kill yourself to have this diet. A diet shouldn't be this like bad thing that you hold really tight for 3 months and then just binge eat after because you just hated life for the last 3 months.
Yeah, it should be something that's sustainable. Totally. And it might be hard at the beginning, but I think like if you do something for long enough, it just becomes a habit, you know?
Totally. So in running, how this affected me early on was, I don't know about you, but there'd be times where I'd have a really bad workout or a really bad long run, and I'll just be like, man, what was it? Like, I'm just so off today. And I just would have no clue why. I just would think like, man, I just like blew up on that workout. Guess I'm terrible at running. And then the more I thought about it, the more Rachel began to coach me, I was like, oh, I slept for like 4 hours last night and then did a 12-mile long run.
Yeah. Or even like 2 nights before. Sometimes it doesn't hit you until like a couple of days later. But if you haven't gotten good sleep like that week at some point, it could hit you.
Yeah.
You know?
Sleep is huge. They've done some studies that we're not going to refer to, but you can look it up, where they've even tested like sleep compared to like performance enhancing drugs, and how someone who gets healthy sleep and is a natural athlete can actually have some benefits over someone who's like taking steroids and not getting any sleep.
Yeah, that's
like,
crazy.
that's how high the boost can be.
Yeah.
Based on certain things. Again, I don't know the exact study, so there's probably little caveats to that. But basically, the importance of sleep is huge. And it'd be interesting if they like made a pill of sleep and you took it and it gave you the 8-hour effect instantly. I feel like people would be hooked. It would be a drug.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like too, with sleep, it's like really important to get consistent sleep over a long time and just be able to like build that into your schedule. So for me, I know like there's been times when like life is busy and stuff like that, and I just have to give myself a cutoff time like at night to be like, I am going to be asleep by like this time. And that's really hard for some people to do, but I feel like that's like what's made life more sustainable for me and running more fun. And I think there's kind of like this mental side to sleep too, where like not only does it help your performance running, you just feel like you're better rested, your muscles are more recovered, but also you're just able to focus more on those hard workouts or races and things like that. You're able to think straight. You're like not emotional as much. Like I get really emotional and just like feel so off if I don't have sleep. So it's not just important for like the performance side of it. It's important for like the mental side of running and life too.
Just life,
Yeah.
It's good for both.
Yeah.
And so is diet.
Yeah.
Which diet, oh my gosh, I mean, if you run, you know how important this is, whether you want to realize it or not. But a lot of things, just like GI issues, happen when you're running that you would never feel if you were just like laying on the couch all day.
Yeah.
Like when you're running and everything's bouncing up and down, you kind of want to know what's bouncing up and down because that can affect you a lot. I remember an early workout, I had gone and ate Chick-fil-A.
Oh no.
And then like ran at night. And just like in my mind, no connection. I'm like, I love Chick-fil-A, I love running, why not combine them? And then sure enough, like 2 miles in, I was like, this is not gonna end well for anybody.
Yeah.
And luckily there's a porta potty there. But stuff like that, where if that would have been a important run, if that was a workout or a race or something, like it could have ruined months of training. Luckily it was just an easy run, which most of your runs should be.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think there's just like so much to nutrition too. So it's kind of like what I was talking about with injuries. If you have like an injury and it's been going on for a long time, like go see someone professional about it. If you feel like your stomach is off or your diet is off, like go see someone about it because they can probably help you. I had some stomach issues about a year and a half ago. They kind of started and just was like not feeling good on runs stomach wise. And I found out that I'm like intolerant to wheat and to dairy. And so that's been like something that I've had to like adjust to over this year. And there's a lot of things with like wheat or gluten or dairy that are like fine to eat and most people can eat, and it's like it can be a healthy part of your diet, but for me it's just like not. So knowing like yourself and being able to adjust your diet and get help if you need to nutritionally, I think is a huge thing.
Totally. That's big. And it changed how you could run. Like you could just perform better, felt better.
Yeah.
Once you figured out what you could and couldn't eat.
Yeah.
And like you said, sometimes even in the research to figure out what she had, there were certain like dietary restrictions some people have where it's like, oh, I can't eat asparagus. And you're like, isn't that like worldwide known as a healthy food? Like it's a vegetable, for crying out loud. But like you never know. It could be something that seems healthy or even would be considered healthy by 99% of people, but it goes back to everyone's a little different. Know your body, know what's good for you, so that you can perform at your best.
Yeah, and I think it really does affect runners more just because like you're running and that's like a lot of stress. It's a lot of pounding on your body and like your stomach too. So I know like I have some runners and athletes that I coach that they like don't have problems until like they're in their marathon and it's like late into the race and like maybe they didn't hydrate well or something like that and their nutrition was just off and it kind of like ruins their race or something, and that's like never a good thing either. So like nutrition is important also to focus on. Like if you're marathoning and need to take in nutrition like during a race, I would say like focus on that while you're training, and have that be part of your training. Like practice that in your long runs and things like that, so that you know like how your body's going to work when you're racing.
Yeah, it's like the classic adage of practice like you play.
Yeah.
If you are going to take a gel in your marathon, like you're saying, in your long run 3 weeks before that marathon, use the gel that you plan to use.
Yeah.
Because there might be 10 great gels on the market and only 2 of them are good for you and the other ones make you want to throw up. So practice that in practice as if it's race day. Maybe your effort's not race day effort, but as if you're in race, you want to try to simulate, especially things like a marathon that are just like brutal.
Yeah.
You want to simulate that as best you can in practice, in the build-up, so that when it comes to race day, you're not regretting your choices.
Right. Yeah, a lot of races too, like on race day, they'll have like specific gels that they'll put out at the tables. So if you're planning on just using the nutrition that the race provides, usually you can look it up online and see what they're offering at the race, and you can buy that and like train with it too. So if you don't want to carry it with you, yeah, there you go, pro tip. If you don't want to carry it with you, usually you can find out online what they'll have at the tables.
That is true. I didn't think about that, but that is, they usually do release it. Right now, I think it's for CIM. They're like voting on Instagram right now for their goo of choice.
Okay, there you go.
There's like,
go vote.
So go vote for what you want.
Yeah, if you're racing CIM.
Sweet. Okay, you want to go to the fourth?
I do, yeah.
Okay, this one, shoes.
Shoes, okay.
Importance of shoes as a rookie mistake. I'll tell you my rookie mistake. I was a tennis player, as I've said multiple times. And I ran in college. There was like this month period. I never ran cross country in high school or track or anything ever until after college. But there was this month where one of my best friends, Gabe Higgins, shout out.
We shouted him out like at least 3 times already on this podcast.
Gabe's the man. He ran cross country and he coached me because I wanted to run a 5K. So I was running with the Virginia Wesleyan cross country team for like a month. And for the first few weeks, I ran in my tennis shoes, not like walk around in town tennis, but like tennis shoes. And I don't know what you know of tennis, but it's kind of like soccer where you're supposed to wear a smaller size than you're given like street shoe because you're changing angles so much like soccer. So you want your feet to be really secure, which is the complete opposite of running where you want a bigger shoe because your feet like expand and swell when you run. So I got really bad blisters. It was terrible. Like I was like peeling layers of my feet
Not good.
off.
Oh my gosh.
And just making dumb mistakes. I was also running in cotton socks.
Ugh.
So it was like cotton socks in just tennis playing shoes.
Terrible. In Virginia,
humidity. And the day I switched to, I went to a running store and got like actual running shoes. I was like, oh my gosh, this is night and day. It can make a huge difference.
Yeah, totally. I see a lot of people that can get injured from just like not changing out their shoes every so often. I would say like 400 to 500 miles is probably like the most that you would want to run in a pair of shoes. So just being able to like keep track of what that is, like how many miles you've run in your shoes, is really, really important so that you know, like, I need to change these out at like 400 miles or 500 miles, whatever it is for your shoe. And another thing that you can do is go into a running store and they'll help fit you for like a shoe that works well with your foot strike. Some people pronate, some people supinate, some people have like a neutral foot strike. And so if you go into a running store, they can see your foot, how it lands. They'll recommend shoes for you, and you can actually try the shoes on like at the running shop, which I think is probably the best way to do it. I know it's like old fashioned because it's easier just to like order shoes online, which you can do like after you figure out the shoe that you like. But I think if you're new to running and are trying to figure out which shoe is good for you, go into a running store actually and like look at shoes.
Totally. And that's eventually what I did later on when I started actually running more seriously, was I went to Fleet Feet, and they have like a scanner. So like you walk across this little pad and they 3D model your feet, which is so
That's
cool. And I know other running places have that technology too, but then I found like, oh, I like this brand of shoes, and it might not be the brand you think, you know, like maybe you think Nike shoes are like the coolest looking shoes, but they fit narrow feet better generally than wider feet, and maybe you might fit in a Brooks better. So it's like, don't like marry the brand, marry the shoe that fits your foot, because your foot might fit in a very specific shoe that might not be the coolest shoe or the flashiest shoe. It might be the one that just works best for you, but ultimately that's what you want.
Yeah, exactly. If you're in a shoe that works well for you, you'll run with less injuries and enjoy running more. So yeah, and a lot of running stores have deals where like you can run in the shoe, and then if you're like not feeling it, if you're getting like a ton of blisters after like 10, 20 miles, you can like bring them back and there's like no harm. You can just like return them and stuff. So yeah, anyway, don't be afraid to go into running stores. They have really super helpful people in them, and they can really help with shoes. The other thing I would touch on with shoes is racing shoes, and just getting in those before you race is really important. And yeah, something that I think really helps you when you're racing a marathon or like road races and stuff like that, and even track races. When I was in high school, I would always like, if it was early on in the track season, I would wear my spikes a little just in like some workouts like right before I race, just to make sure that my feet were like ready for them and my legs wouldn't get like super sore from the race.
Totally. Yeah, depending on how serious of a runner you are, depending on your goals, the distance, and your money situation, depends a lot on what type of shoes you want. Trainers, as they call them, at least in America, I know they call them different things other places, but trainers are called trainers because that's what you're training in the majority of the time. So these are going to be like really comfortable shoes. They should be something that like you could walk around and be like, oh yeah, these feel great.
A lot more cushion.
A lot more cushion. Because of the cushion, they're heavier.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be as fast. And then if you're doing more like a tempo workout or something more speedy, it's not a race, but you're like trying to get fast, you might put on flats. If you're like on a road, there's road flats, there's spike flats if you're like on a track and you're doing more short distance or shorter distance work on a track, but you're gonna get like your flats, and those are a little stiffer, a little lighter, a little less padding. And like Rachel said, if you jump into something like that too fast because you're like, oh well, I could run so much faster in flats, well, it's also harder on your legs, it's harder on your calves, especially because they have to work harder. There's less cushion, there's less stability there. So you kind of need to like earn the strength of the new shoe and train in it in smaller dosages of what your eventual dosage race is going to be.
Yeah, add it in slowly.
Add it in slowly. Yeah. That's part of, like, I'm injured right now because of that. Because in my last marathon buildup, I very slowly added in training in flats, which then race day in the marathon was probably bad because I started cramping up in my calves at the back of the marathon. So this marathon, we were like, well, let's get ahead of the ball. But we probably got it a little too far ahead of it. Yeah,
I'm kind of kicking myself for that and for not like having you train in flats a little sooner in the last marathon and then like overdoing it a little bit in this build up. But we're getting there, and you'll be good by CIM.
Totally. But it goes to show, like, even we're still learning these things.
Yeah.
But we know there's differences. It's like there is a big difference between running in flats and running in trainers. and when to do those is very important, and knowing how much to do those is very important.
Yeah.
And then on race day, you might be running in a super shoe, like an Alpha Fly or Vaporfly, where there's a carbon fiber insert that is just like, it's a springboard. Like, you genuinely can run faster. It's cheating. That's been legalized.
Yeah.
But you can't run as fast as you can in those unless you've kind of like earned the mileage in those flats after earning a bunch of mileage in the trainers.
Yeah, and I would even say now a lot of pros, and like I myself am training to like in some carbon fiber shoes, like while I'm doing like my road like workouts and stuff like that, just because I feel like it is like better, it translates better to race day. Like, I want to be practicing in what I'm going to be racing in on race day, because it does change your form a little. So I want my body to be like used to that form for sure.
Exactly. And yeah, the form is important, and if you have the leg strength to run in something like a Vaporfly or a super shoe of some kind, then it is most ideal, because you will, like Kipchoge talks about this all the time. He trains in Nikes, in super shoes all the time, because he can recover better. So he can do a big long run workout really fast and not be as exhausted. But if someone like me tried that, my calves would probably be like on fire the next day.
Yeah.
Because I haven't run 150 miles a week for 50 years.
Totally,
So.
yeah. There's one more shoe that I am running in more now, and I didn't until like last year, and that is trail shoes, which are different. Most of them are more like trainer type shoes, although they do have like racing shoes that are like for trails and stuff. But those are a lot different because they have a lot more tread on the bottom of the shoe. And I run in Merrell's, which I've really liked, and I tried a few different shoes before I landed on Merrell's, and I really like the Merrell shoes. I feel like their traction is really good. I feel like stable in the trail and stuff. But I think I would run in trails like, I did some trail runs before I was like a trail runner, and I was just running in normal like trainers that don't have tread on them, and I was kind of like, I don't know, like I like running in the trails, but I don't know if I'm like that good of a trail runner. And it really was just because I had no tread on my shoes. And so like my like trainers just were not moving well in the trail. So it really did help to have like a shoe with good tread on it, so that like I'm not slipping over every rock and like twisting my ankles all the time and stuff like that. So if you're in the trails a lot, I would definitely suggest getting a good trail shoe.
Yeah, that's night and day. And I'm not even a pro trail runner, but I remember running in, like, I like the Ghosts, the Brooks Ghosts as my trainer, and I've been wearing it for years. But Merrell sent Rachel a ton of shoes, and they sent me a pair because they were just nice, and they felt bad for me probably. And we ran the same route in Sedona, which is very rocky if you've run it before. And I remember running it in the Ghosts, and like, I was afraid for my life that I was going to slip off the canyon and just die.
Oh my gosh.
But then running in the Merrells, it was just like the grip. I felt like Spider-Man, like running down, running up. I was like, I'm not slipping at all. So
yeah,
it's almost even
Makes a
more
huge
pronounced
difference.
in trails if you're running trails.
yeah, totally. It was almost for me like going from a like trainer to like a race shoe, like just on the trail, because of how much grip it had and how good it felt in the trail. So
Yeah.
it was fun. It was a fun feeling to try them on for the first time.
Yeah. But yeah, all that to say is your shoe makes a big difference.
Totally, yeah.
And for race day, it makes a huge difference. So you could drop minutes, especially the longer the distance. I mean,
Yeah.
in a marathon, you could legitimately drop minutes off your time by having the right pair of shoes.
Totally, yeah.
So
There we go. So that was number 4, I think.
last one.
Last one.
Dang. Okay, we talked about this a little bit, but we're going to go into a little more detail. Rookie mistake number 5 is earning your mileage.
Earn your mileage.
Got
What
it.
does that mean to you?
17. So again, depends on what type of person you are. For me, I kind of full send only. And when it came to running, I did the same thing. And I went to YouTube University a lot to learn about running, and I'm learning from pro athletes, or at least like D1 athletes, and they're running 80, 90, 100 plus mile weeks. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, that's like what I need to work towards or like be at as soon as possible. But the reality is I was new. Like, I had new legs. new to running, and I just like tried to build up mileage too fast. I wanted to be at 50 miles a week yesterday, and my body could probably only handle 20. And I could slowly build up and earn those mileages and earn the speeds, but you kind of have to earn it, because otherwise you have a high chance of burning out, high chance of getting injured, and ultimately just shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, I would say burning out. Well, I don't know which one you would do first, like get injured or get... Okay, and we're back. Our camera messed up again, but we did order a new camera,
Yes.
and it should be in the mail, so hopefully...
In the next video.
Yeah, the next video, we will have a new camera. But I was saying, I don't know which one would happen first, burnout or injury, but it would be one of them. And I think it's just tough. Like when you first get into running, sometimes you're like really, really excited to go out and just run, and you have these really high goals and you're like super excited about going for them and like crushing them, which is awesome. But you really do have to like bring yourself down, not down, but just like
give up on your dreams.
No, oh my gosh. No, just like control your excitement for running.
That's what I meant to say.
Right. Just like control your excitement, because in the end you are going to be able to reach your goals faster and better, and it'll be more sustainable for you if you work into it slowly. And you'll enjoy running more because you won't be injured and you won't be burnt out.
Totally.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's not that much to say on that one. I think it's just like building mileage slowly is good. And we can talk about what your mileage was when you first started running, and kind of go through that to give people an idea of like your progression.
Yeah. I think I started in the low 20s.
Yeah.
And stayed that way for a while. For my first marathon, which I ran almost exactly a year after starting running, because I started in November of 2019. I remember because it was like right before Thanksgiving I started my running journey, and I ran my first marathon in November 2020.
Yeah.
It was one of the few that wasn't canceled that year. And I don't think my highest mileage was like 45.
Yeah, I think so. It wasn't...
I may have hit
50
50
yet.
once.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was like mid 40s was like the last few weeks of the biggest part of my buildup.
Yeah.
So nothing crazy. I will say though that, not to like pat myself on the back, but I don't know if a lot of people, I ran a 3:13. I don't know if a lot of people could run a 3:13 off of that little mileage.
Yeah, although I did have a friend who, she's a woman, yeah, so, shout out Christy. We could do a shout out, yeah. Christy, she just ran a 3:29 in the marathon. It was her first marathon, and I think her highest mileage was like 35-ish to maybe 40, I don't know, but probably more like 35 miles a week. And her longest long run was 20 miles, but she was biking on 2 of the days. So she, and then she had 1 rest day. So she had a complete rest day. She had 1 day that was like a speedier workout that was kind of shorter. She had 2 bike days and a long run with a workout in it, and then the other 2 days were easy days during the week. So a lot of her mileage, or like some of her like workouts, were on the bike, but that worked well for her, and she loves biking. So
Totally.
Yeah.
And for both of the, like, that's an insane result to have. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would be like, yeah, just run 25, 30 miles a week and you can run a Boston qualifier.
Oh yeah, she definitely has good natural talent.
And
for
she's
sure.
been an athlete like her entire life.
Right.
And she's done triathlons and like, she's a beast. So
Yeah.
you have to, I think it would have been better for me not to say my time or her time. It's like, look at the mileage. She ran 25, 30 for her first marathon.
Yeah.
I ran 40, 45 for my first marathon.
Yeah.
I could have run a 5-hour marathon, but that may be the realistic amount of like, oh, you could build up to 40 miles in a year. It took me
Right.
a year to build the mileage. Forget about how good it was.
Yeah, I would say, our point to this is just showing the mileage. So you could, I think, run a marathon off of like 45-ish miles, or even 35 if you're doing some good cross training in there too.
Totally.
Yeah. So.
And then for this build up to CIM, I'm already at 50. and I'll probably like maybe 60, like low 60s once or twice will be my max. I'll be in like mid 50s.
Yeah,
for a while.
And you've been running now for 3 years almost, or it'll be 3 years once you're running the marathon. So
exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of like a timeline of like his mileage and then other people that we know who have run maybe their first marathon.
Yeah, exactly. But it's funny because you think like, oh, well, to be a pro, they're doing all these crazy workouts, and maybe you follow your favorite pro athletes on Strava or Instagram and you're like, man, I want to do this. But there's this weird amount of, you kind of have to earn the right to do harder training. Like Rachel is training harder than me, putting in more time, putting in more mileage, partly because she's a pro athlete, but partly because she's earned it. If I tried doing what she's doing, I wouldn't instantly be a pro athlete because I'm doing what she's doing. She's doing what she's doing because she's done it her whole life and has slowly built her body and toughened the bones and the ligaments and the joints and the endurance to a point where now she can do 100 miles like I do 50 miles.
Yeah, and I was talking about this with another pro runner kind of recently, just about how it's hard, like just being on Instagram or having like social media now. I think that a lot of people like see pro runners and how hard they're training and think like, I need to train like them. But if you haven't done that training, like you're going to burn yourself out or like get injured, like if you haven't built up to like what they're doing and like you haven't run your entire life and stuff like that. And it's not a bad thing not to like train like a pro runner or as hard as your other friend is or something like that. Like don't compare yourself. Just like listen to how your body is feeling and listen to your body's cues. And I think that's a huge thing that a lot of people miss with running is like you will be your best when you're listening to your body and like doing what you can with like the body that you have.
Totally.
Yeah.
And this isn't crazy to compare to other sports too, you know? Like the guys that are lifting a lot are only lifting that much because they had to slowly build their PRs over years and years and years. So what looks easy to them is like, if you make it equivalent, it is what you're doing. Like I always say, I'm working as hard as a pro athlete. I'm just doing half the volume. You know, volume is what you have to earn. The hard work, the consistency, that is all in your court, and you can work on that right now.
Right. And I will say, like, Drew might be as tired as a pro runner is in their build-up. They've just been doing it for longer. So, like, it's not like they just feel, like, so wiped out because of, like, all this training that they're doing. Like, they feel just as tired as he does. They've just, like, built up to it and, like, can handle that volume more.
Totally. They've earned it.
Yeah, they've earned it. So, yeah, earn your mileage for sure.
Yeah. And that's it. That's 5 of like what we thought were very common rookie mistakes that I definitely made. She's made a long time ago, and that she deals with in coaching all the time. So if you agree, disagree, let us know in the comments. Hit the subscribe button. If there's other questions you'd love for us to answer in future podcasts,
let us know.
Let us know. Yeah, we might make a part 2 to this
if you like it.
If you like it enough.
If you want to know
create
more
some
rookie
number.
mistakes.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
If there's 10 likes on this video.
Right.
But with that, I think that's pretty much it.
Sweet. Yeah. We will see you guys next week.